Yeah, compared to that. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I even sometimes get excited about a stupid, rain puddle on the ground or something.
Dude, rain puddles are the best.
Yeah, just because nobody would really care, I think, but we do.
Welcome to the Learnsquared podcast, a place where we take a closer look at the students, instructors, and friends of Learnsquared. I'm your host, Aaron Dhanda, a concept artist and the head of propaganda and memes at Learnsquared. Our guest today is Lars Sowig, a senior concept artist working at EA Dice. Lars and I speak about his beginnings in the industry, studio life, his Learnsquared journey, as well as geeking out about space. This was recorded back in January, a time when handshakes were a thing and toilet paper didn't cost as much as a high-end graphics card. We hope you enjoy this episode. Let's go. Let's get going. Hello, Lars. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
I'm pretty sure I can pronounce your first name properly. How about your last name? I don't want to butcher it, so want to give us a quick intro?
Just Sowig. Or Sowig, or however.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your origin story?
So I'm currently in Stockholm, but I'm originally from Germany,
cool.
Where I went to school and lived there for pretty much my entire life until work basically got me to move abroad. Mm-hmm. And I studied after school digital media design. And from there on, I reorientated to get my foot into the games industry. And I started out working for Crytek in the beginning as a 2D artist for like half a year or something. And then got into the concept art team, basically, which was really nice and a really good experience. I had the opportunity there to for the first time to work with like-minded people that are like super talented and are willing to push me and my skills as well. And from there on, roughly 1.5 years later, I got an opportunity to work for Ubisoft. That required me to move to Sweden, to the south of Sweden. It's a city called Malmö, and I worked there for Massive Entertainment. I was working there on the Division 2, and now I'm currently working at DICE in Stockholm, so roughly 500 kilometers more north. So yeah, basically throughout my career, I moved more north, and it got a bit colder and colder every time. But it's been quite a ride. I'm now roughly 4 years in the games industry.
Cool.
And I've seen a lot of things, and got a lot of opportunities. Different experiences, different studios, very different people. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's sick, man. So when you jumped into Crytek, was that straight after was that straight after college, or was there a bit of a hiatus? Did you go after digital media?
Yeah.
What did you do after that? Was there
So the things I studied are pretty much unrelated to anything game like.
Yeah.
I managed to tailor my diploma at the final semesters to do something with games.
Yeah.
So my professors were fine with doing that.
Oh, that's cool.
And that basically enabled me to study a few things. That was I think also the first time where I got into contact with Learnsquared.
Yeah.
And I was basically working really hard for I don't know, couple of months. I cannot recall for how long, but it basically gave me the opportunity then, after sending out applications all around the world, to have an interview in the city nearby. So I was living in Darmstadt.
Okay.
And I sent all the applications pretty much around the globe, but the only reply I got was from Frankfurt, which was like half an hour away, which was really awesome. And I was, of course, super nervous at that time, because I had like, I was pretty good in like presenting my work, and the courses enable you to create something of very high quality. But at that point, I, of course, was pretty much, just like copying workflows from other people. So I wasn't really confident in, like selling my own work. But I got the 2D artist position there, which was basically, capturing in-game screenshots and then like polishing them up in Photoshop. So pretty similar to what a lot of concept art artists are doing nowadays, working out the 3D base and then painting over that. So that was pretty much that role. And I think even when I started at Crytek, like 2 weeks after, the art director of the team I was working in like put a lot of trust in me, and just gave me like this project to do the game cover for a VR title that the company was working on.
Cool.
It's called Robinson: The Journey. So that was super exciting, but also super stressful for me, because you start in the games industry, and your first tasks are like insane. Pretty much, it's like there's nothing you can compare from what I did before, pretty much. And that also like pushed me a lot, these type of tasks, because you're like, wow, okay, now I have to really, I cannot fail this, basically. And you work a bit of overtime, and you bring your work home basically after work, and keep studying. And so that was a really nice start, I think, and also very lucky.
Oh, that's good. I mean, like you mentioned about when you got given extra responsibility, and do you feel like that sense of like intimidation, not so much that, more like pressure or like wanting to do well, do you think that was mainly more from yourself, or was it more from maybe the brief, or was it maybe a blend of both?
I think so. So let me try to explain. It's just a theory. I'm not 100% sure, but I think throughout my short career, I always was very fortunate to get high responsibility tasks. I had a lot of colleagues that were doing tasks that required, let's say, I don't want to say less skill, but they basically had less impact on whatever that might be in terms of the product or whatever. But I think what really helped a lot in like getting these high responsible tasks is like building my portfolio on the side, like my art director or my colleagues would basically constantly see how active I am on, my ArtStation or on Facebook, or if I, share some sketches with people. And these type of tasks may have influenced, people's decisions of like giving certain tasks to me.
Right.
If you get what I mean, like it's, when you look at if you go into my ArtStation profile, like you have it open there, right? If you just click on my name up there, and if you scroll down, it's like you can see in the, it's like exactly. If you click it, like it's kind of, it's like very sci-fi, and in terms of the quality, you can pretty much compare it to all the other stuff that I was doing. I'd say. So they were probably seeing that and thought, okay, I might be a good fit for this type of task, you know.
So that's quite interesting that even though obviously they had hired you, it's interesting that it was more like your, I guess we could call it side stuff or personal stuff that potentially or most likely influenced your more professional stuff.
Yes.
So that's pretty neat, and it also confirms it more. I'm sure you'd agree, and it's been mentioned many times by a lot of other professionals on many podcasts, and even just when you meet them at conventions, etc. Is obviously the focus on developing your skills, which you obviously said you were doing through the Learnsquared courses and other things, and just pushing yourself to build a great portfolio, and also to do more personal work. So even if it's a case of, let's say you were comfortable in your skills, maybe it wasn't a case of just to improve your skills. You were already comfortable, you're already highly skilled. But maybe if, let's say someone doesn't do that personal work and just relies on the professional work they're doing, I guess you can never really know what opportunities or what doors you might even open, because you're always going to be judged by that. And regarding personal work for yourself, do you approach it differently compared to professional stuff? I'm guessing there's a lot of, obviously with professional stuff, there's always the brief, there's always what the client needs or what the company needs and the limitations that come with that. But do you approach them differently in any particular way?
Yeah, so sometimes, I actually apply things that I learned at work and try to incorporate that into personal work.
Nice.
And vice versa.
Yeah,
but often it's also that I take the personal work as an opportunity to do different stuff as well. Like working outside the box you're in, and also take more time and try to have a bit more quality in some things where like time would run out pretty much when you would try to do this in a production pipeline where sometimes schedules are more tight.
And do you, not to put you on the spot, do you prefer one over the other, or like you mentioned, do you like the fact that there's an option to do both?
So, I mean, as I said before, if you can basically steer with your personal work and people see that your career path, you can pretty much end up doing stuff you very much enjoy in professional work as well, right?
For sure.
But of course, like there's like personal work is always super nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard sometimes to get motivated, after work, like sit down and do something after work. But other than that, there's like there's goods and bads for both.
Oh yeah, of course. And I guess that maybe there is not, like, I guess unless you say you only did personal work, maybe you'd be itching to do more professional stuff, and then vice versa. So I guess the ultimate with anything is to get the balance right. Myself personally, for the last 2-3 years, it has just been a bunch of personal stuff, which has been great because it's like my own thing. But then you kind of itch towards like, maybe I wish I had a bit more professional stuff. And when I started getting more professional stuff, it's a bit like I kind of miss doing my personal stuff more often. So there's always that grass is greener kind of thing. So always keep looking for that grass, and I guess eventually in all areas. So Crytek was like 4 years ago, would you say, or that time?
I always have to go to my LinkedIn profile, give me a bit because it's very hard for me to keep track. So I worked at Crytek starting July 2016 to December 2017. So that's like 1.5 years.
Nice. So,
and
if I may ask, how old are you now?
I'm 29.
29, damn. I'm 33, so a few years on you. Right. So, what made you? So you mentioned obviously the digital media. That was like university, college type thing. How does it work?
Exactly. Yes.
And
that's
what made you choose that? Was it more like that seemed to be the most interesting course you could choose, or was there a different motivation at that point in time? You would have been about, I guess, 20,
Yeah,
23, something like that, maybe, or a bit younger, around then.
yes. I think I
Or early 20s,
started
right?
like, yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I think 25 is when I started working in the industry.
Cool.
But I think like what made me choose this path basically is like I realized, as I said before, during the last semesters, where I then tailored, my diploma towards it. It's just that I was working on the side for interface design
Okay.
positions. Like I did like interface designs for a couple of bigger companies.
Mhm.
And I mean the salary and everything was really good, and there was like it's definitely a career path I could have taken. It's just like that I kind of felt a bit like not under challenged. It's just that I didn't enjoy it so much. Like you have very different challenges there,
Right.
and it's I think I just saw like I realized that there is this position that where you can basically do this type of stuff. Like when I was younger, um, starting off with my first computer, I was always like doing, like very primitive types of artworks and illustrations and stuff. So I thought, yeah, that might be actually what I enjoy way more. So I just tried. That's pretty much it. So.
And have you always been, like you mentioned the computer, what about even younger? Have you always been like a drawer? Was you always artistic, or was your
Yeah,
imagination running
I
wild?
tried a lot of things with my like in my beginnings. I tried to make music with
man.
Magic's Music Maker. I did like montages with video games on YouTube,
Yeah.
and video editing with After Effects and Sony Vegas,
Yeah.
this type of things. But I was also doing taking like smaller design contests in forums where you would like design signatures
Right.
even snowboards and that type of stuff,
Anything
where
and everything you get your hands on, right?
yeah, pretty much. Like I think I just really didn't know what suits me best, I'd say. So I was just trying to do everything. And looking back now, I also think that doing a lot of different things also is very beneficial today for me. Like
100%. Yeah.
yeah. I think you build this type of visual library, and you get a better understanding of how to make something cooler
Yeah,
or more
definitely.
interesting.
And I think even now more than more so from before, it's maybe a bit more, I wouldn't say important, but it's definitely advantageous because tools are easier to get at now, quicker to learn. The learning curve isn't as steep as it used to be.
Exactly. Oh yeah, for sure.
Resources, inspiration. I mean, in theory, although it's always best to collect research and do your own research as well as look online, in theory, you could just go on Google Images, do enough research, and get enough that way as well. So I guess the playing field is more even. But then, like you mentioned, those are all experiences in different disciplines and packages, and just having your brain go in many different places.
Yeah.
Although initially you might feel like I'm a bit all over the place, there's always that one project. I'm pretty sure you can probably think of a few instances in projects you've worked on where inspirations come to you or solutions have been, you found that solution based on those little forays from many years back.
Yes. I don't have a specific example for that now, but I'm pretty sure like what you're saying is very true.
And like,
Yeah.
I guess it's all learning. So even if it's a case of picking up editing or music production, for example, many of those things, even things like I guess I wouldn't call it not creative because I think it is, but like cooking and other disciplines, I guess not considered art in terms of something visual. There's a lot of similarities. Your brain would fire in the similar ways but instead of using a pen, you're just using, I guess, a knife or etc. etc.
Exactly.
So you just keeping those synapses firing where they should do. And it's pretty cool to hear that you are basically piquing your curiosity. So would you say you're quite a curious person?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially the learning new tools
Yeah.
that's what all this is pretty much very beneficial for, right?
Mhm.
Like I think if I'd haven't taken a look at all these other areas and fields, I'd probably have a way harder time nowadays to adapt to technology and
For
so
sure.
on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can relate to that. I did industrial design at university. That I wasn't too sold on that at the end of it, and I didn't really get the best work out of that as well. And then it kind of went
Mhm.
stagnant, and I just thought, I've done the uni bit, don't need to learn anything more. I thought I had the skills and I'll make a portfolio.
Yeah.
But then again, I realized that this isn't working. Why is it not clicking? Why does this not translate to concept art? And then, obviously you just click thinking that I don't know shit yet. I need to learn this new field and find the resources to learn it.
Hmm.
But I've done similar things. Like I do mess around with like music production. Still do, in fact, but I did it since I was like
That's nice.
18, and it's more a personal thing. But it's still something that I'll probably invest as much hours in as I do to art, just because I love doing it.
Oh wow.
But
Okay.
then similar things as well. Like anytime I had a computer, this is like I think even before having reasonable internet connection was a common thing. It'd always be like my cousin would always have software. He'd have, I think, what did he have? I think he had Sony Vegas as well. And what was their music editing one or Waveform? I think it's something. Sony had one as well. So he'd always have all these little things. He'd always keep trying them out, Photoshop,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And it just felt like, I guess, another toy, another game to figure out.
Exactly.
And the question I want to get at is because it's mentioned many times, like a lot of people are excited at this with how many tools are available, but at the same time, also maybe it feels exhausting thinking, oh gosh, I got to learn this new thing, or I got to learn this now, otherwise it won't be complete. Um, does that, and I guess for some people they've mentioned that it does intimidate them, that they have to like pick up something else new. Like I think a good example is maybe Houdini is probably one of the most intimidating things to pick up right now, because as cool as it just looks like a completely new alien language.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'd agree. Anyone who's spent a fair bit of time trying to learn something knows that learning doesn't happen overnight, and it requires an investment of time. But would you say, like, when you see these tools, like I mentioned before, music softwares or editing apps, or even all these little things, do you get excited when you see something new, or are you on the other side where you think it's cool, but I kind of wish I don't need to learn it unless I have to?
Oh no, I think all the new things we are getting. I mean, I get this like subtlety of being afraid of it.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
understand that because a lot of tools become so good and so fast that
Hmm.
they pretty much replace things you might have even learned before, where you like
Totally. Yeah,
invested a lot of time and
yeah,
uh, but yeah, I think we're living in a very exciting time, like
yeah, man.
where we get photo scanning, or I don't know, 3D printing, VR sculpting, and all these type of things.
So crazy. I mean, it's like stuff you'd
Uh,
wish, like you almost dreamt that this would be cool if
yeah.
we could do this, and now it's almost like right on our doorstep. Even if it's not already there yet, it's on its way.
Yes, yes. But now, like for example, uh, I I haven't really updated my workflow or the way I work for
Mm.
maybe half a year now. Like I was just in the same tools all the time.
Yeah.
Then we hired, like in our team, two new guys that were working with Blender and the latest tools from whatever. And they're like, hey, did you know you can now do this and that? And then you realize like what you're doing at the moment, like it's completely outdated. You know what I mean? It's insane. Like, and that's just half a year, and you kind of see what people are doing out there, and you kind of get it. But once you see it like live working, you can actually see the benefits, and it's insane like how fast these type of things are developing. And then especially for concept art, I think you actually are kind of how to say, asked to stay up to date nowadays. Like you need to always adapt to all the new things, because they will keep you being efficient. And
for sure. I remember when I first decided I wanted to get into concept art, it must have been about, I don't know, 2010, 11, maybe 12, something like that. And I think I just picked up a Wacom then. It wasn't an interest, I think it's a bamboo or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to do digital painting, and I didn't even knew photo bashing was like a concept, even a thing. So I just tried to paint everything like a painting, and it just took so long and felt so inefficient. And then when I took some courses, like even Jammers, the first course I took was of any kind of course was, I think, narrative concept art from Jammer. And
yes,
I just couldn't believe I'm not going to say shortcuts in like in a negative sense, but the fact that he used these shortcuts in such a powerful way that got to the result. And then it made me realize that, especially with concept art, is the process is almost irrelevant. It's all about the result.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Like also nobody cares really. Like
of course.
Like how you got there really. Like if you like, your task as a concept artist is to either, while inspiring, of course, also, delivering solutions. And people can't wait endlessly long for you to, come up with a solution. So,
and even if they do, that's going to be a project you might only get once in your life. Otherwise, most cases it's going to be, why didn't you finish it yesterday?
And it also seems to become, to like get more about, it's becoming more about creating solutions for a lot of things at the same time. Like, I mean, it's insane how fast you can create like a painting that basically is showing off an entire world and how that works.
Very true.
And before you would basically have to break that down in like, sketches, and maybe at the end, like after, I don't know, half a year or something, they would hire a painter to paint something on a canvas, and it would take a month or even longer.
It's mad how like quickly things can get done.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you mentioned that obviously even, like 6 months feels like, you just blink and 6 months pass. Like last year just felt like a week long as opposed to 12 months long. And obviously you mentioned that in 6 months technically didn't update your workflow, and then you got introduced
not at all
a new workflow. But even then, that's like, that's still nothing. 6 months. And it's interesting how that can completely change. But also, I don't know if you'd agree, it also shows that if a workflow is working for you, then it's okay just to stick with it, providing you're still getting that solution out there and getting that result out there. And maybe you could always hold off, or when you get a pocket of time, then pick that up.
Yes. I mean, I think also like, Jama is pretty much notorious for, like chasing down all the newest things that are out there, like a crazy pioneer,
For sure.
But so I don't think you have to do that, but you should like, be open-minded and realize
sure.
like after it should come in phases where you like update your stuff and get to try new things.
You're absolutely right. Open mind is the key approach. Look throughout history. I don't even know when the point in time came when artists became precious about workflow, because tools are always forever changing. Obviously, it's accelerated over the last, let's say, not even 10 years or so, maybe even less. Let's say 5 years. But up until that, there's always an advancement in even brushes, even pigment of paints and all that kind of stuff. So things are always changing, and it's interesting. When did people become precious about? I'm sure you obviously mentioned, you've heard all the debates that people have mentioned, or the outrage that people have when someone uses a new technique and it's not considered art, etc.
Yes.
But again, it's almost like a moot point in the sense that it doesn't even matter, because as long as you get the job done, that's all that matters.
Yes.
But then, have you ever got lost in chasing a new workflow?
Do you mean like I started it and then I was like, it's not for me or something?
I guess so. Or maybe it was more a case of you got so into a new tool or learning it, it kind of became detrimental to a particular project, because the solution, which is normally the goal we chase for, was kind of secondary to, I want to perfect this, this new tool or this new plugin or this new experiment that I've got going on.
I mean, that might definitely come. I think at some point that there will be something that will be very awkward to pick up, and I maybe give up or something. But so far it has been that I basically build everything around a couple of tools, nice. 3D tools mainly.
Smart, yeah.
And I just kind of like, how to say, like expand it around them, like slightly, and try to connect them a bit better with time, I'd say. But
I think that's the best approach, and I think
and also like I started like doing more like crazier, more fancy environments lately, and that's when I basically have like a second pipeline, like, because before I was doing ZBrush, Keyshot, and Maya and all that, and now it's more like Maya and game engines and Octane, stuff like that. So it's like two different routes depending on what the task is. And
for sure. Similar. I remember just using Keyshot initially just to get some renders out there. I wasn't even using proper Keyshot. It was the non-commercial one, so I just kept taking screenshots when it kind of rendered, so I don't get the watermark. And then now it's like yourself, a few of the different renderers, and I guess, would you say it's almost like whatever tool fits the job now?
Yes, exactly. Like, I think it's the best way obviously is like to adjust to whatever you want to achieve. Like, some tools are just superior than others in what they are doing.
Sure.
Good. Like,
I remember trying to render like environments in Keyshot, and it kind of got a bit messy.
Yes, exactly. Like that's. But yeah, like Octane, for example, has this environment setup thing.
Yeah.
Like you have like an environment lighting, and that is so powerful. Like, good luck trying to achieve that with Keyshot. It's
exactly. I mean, exactly. And it's like Keyshot is obviously more designed for product visualization, like automotive and product design, that kind of stuff. And I think it's quite a good example of how concept artists, or our kind of field in general, we're trying to just bend something to our will as opposed to do what it's initially intended for. I think Mache is a good example with that, with Fusion 360, designed for engineers and CAD modelers and etc. And then used it for concept art to very good effect. But I think that's a good segue into your setup and your workflow now. So obviously you mentioned initially it was Maya and Keyshot and ZBrush, and now it's obviously on Maya Octane. I guess you still use Keyshot once in a while.
Yes,
Kind
of
have
course.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it depends. Like, if I'm doing, like more prop design or something like that, I go with the Keyshot
Super cool.
ZBrush kind of
Super
way.
cool.
And if I have to do like environment, I'd either use like game engines. If I don't have that at hand, I try to, rebuild a scene or something in
Yeah. So talk to me
like
about
Maya and then Octane.
game engines. Any particular ones? Is it like Unity, Unreal, or is it more stuff that you guys use at work?
Yes, I mean, I'm currently at DICE. We're using an engine called Frostbite.
Yeah.
And at Massive, we use an engine called Snowdrop, and at Crytek, obviously the Cry engine.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like what we were basically discussing before regarding learning new tools. They all behave differently. They all have different interfaces, and in their core, they're doing the same exact thing, but there are always these subtleties you need to adjust to. And also some are better than others in doing certain things and so on.
So I'm not totally clued on game engines, but for my simplified way I reason with them, they're just essentially renderers, right?
Yes.
In a simple form.
Yes, exactly.
So how you use it for work, or I'm guessing concept art work, is it just assets put into there and then you just screen grab, or is it something a bit like Keyshot or Octane where you can actually manipulate the lights, etc., and then
I mean, talking about game engines. So yes, like you're saying, we have, of course, all the assets, but you'd be surprised how fast like a small team of like level artists or something can build an entire map.
Wow.
Within a game engine, and it just runs in real time. It's like superior to any ray trace renderer or whatever. And I also I'm very convinced that this will be the future, that we gonna work with game engines to produce art, because it's insanely fast. Like, you just drag and drop your asset, it's perfectly rendered already. You can change the light and you basically just have to screenshot it. It's
that's perfect.
And when you work for a company in a studio, of course, you have all these things at hand. Like, it becomes a very different way of working, I guess, than if you're like a freelancer and you literally have like nothing. You have to basically build all the stuff yourself. I don't know, maybe they provide you with some things that might, support you, but still, it's different, I think.
That's interesting. And I totally agree with you. Even like on a less artistic point of view, if it is, say, a proprietary game engine, obviously that the studio that you've been at you kind of use, it just shortens, I guess, delivery time for things, and it just compresses the overall pipeline, so it gets from point A to point B a lot quicker. So I guess
exactly. I mean, you can also like submit the changes that you did inside the engine and provide other teams with exactly that, and it's what people will play later on, right? So the interface to the final product is like way quicker, as if I'm like in like build an entire scene in Octane or something and rendered it out. They will have a 2D image at the end that they will try to copy basically with their tools.
And obviously, if it's in an engine, you take a screenshot, but then if they do want to amend it afterwards, it's not exactly let's decode the screenshot in 3D. You just open the file and it's already there, and they can do the adjustments what they need to do. And have you messed around with like Unreal or Unity? Or I guess you find it on YouTube. Okay.
Yes.
How do you find those compared to the more proprietary ones on the studios you worked at? Do they feel more basic, or are they kind of, like you mentioned, the same thing, just a different interface, different UI?
I think, without giving away any details about the engine stuff, but in general, it's like the engines in the studios, of course, are like designed for what type of game they are doing. It's also like they have the engine for, I don't know, whatever game, let it be Battlefield or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the engine they use for Battlefield is, of course, tailored to doing first person shooters. So it's like you have to see it almost as like a engineered tool just for that purpose. And a lot of the tools they don't need are like either cut out to save performance or whatever. And other things like other tech they need, like, I don't know, crazy waves or something in water, they are enhanced in that engine.
Nice.
And if you compare it to Unreal Engine, which is like for more commercial use, I'd say, you'll find, I mean, a lot of different tools you might not even need to use.
Right.
So it's very different. But I think nowadays in the core, all these engines are like, they're all super powerful. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can achieve same results with like whatever engine if you just have the right artists working with them.
Yeah. That's sick, man. I haven't played with them yet. I do want to though. I'm just kind of like putting it off because I do get a bit carried away sometimes, and hence why I asked that question. Do you get lost in the tool? Because sometimes I do that, and I've been messing around with Houdini for about probably a year and a bit now, and just only the other day I had something to do, but I was more obsessed with trying to get this thing working that I kept breaking all the time because I don't know what I'm doing. But then it was kind of a bit of a pointless task. But ultimately I think, especially with the workflow that I use, I think it's like yourself, there's a lot of 3D, and sometimes it's more like it's just placing things in 3D space than rendering it, as opposed to artistically crafting something. And then a game engine just seems to be perfect for that, because put your stuff there, it's kind of already rendered because you can see it, all the lighting, etc., etc. And then obviously it's a usable asset that you could take other shots of in the future. So I think even for me, from my personal point of view, and I guess artists that do similar stuff with the heavy 3D workflow, it's the natural way it's going to end up, I think. And obviously you've experienced that yourself, so you definitely can see that's where it's headed.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you got that now. You mentioned Maya. Do you use that for like modeling stuff in, or is it more like to assemble things in? What's your how does Maya work for you?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes kind of like how to say. I mean, I'm at the point now where I used, my tools so often over and over again that I'm kind of, decide on whether I go with Maya or ZBrush depending on like how optimized things need to be, how detailed things need to be, for example. So if I don't know, want to have like a super detailed prop, and I know already, okay, this type of thing, I know exactly how I would do that in ZBrush. And I can also, make it as detailed as I want it to be. That's what basically makes that decision for me. But I use Maya for, like just having things a bit more optimized. I'm actually not, I don't consider myself as like a, classic low poly modeling guy. Like I'm not really caring about good topology and these type of things. It's more like creating a base and then later
Did you ever used to, or has that never been?
No, not at all. No. I never really learned actually how to model, and I'm actually quite happy that I didn't, because it becomes kind of, I don't want to say irrelevant, but I mean, you get, in my field at least, in concept art, you get away with a lot of things, with a lot of imperfection in things. You can basically cheat in everything, and you can be very careless about very technical things. So I mean, huge respect to everyone that can like perfectly, I don't know, model a bottle or something with the perfect topology without any polygon wasted or something. but it's not that necessary to know for me, because I could even drop like a 1 million polygon bottle into my scene and just paint over it in the end, or it's like it becomes this level of where you learn a bit of everything, but you're actually not really mastering things. I feel like, and that's also what makes concept artists, let's say, better in adapting to new tools, because we can use them, in like a kind of a only touch them on the surface, even sometimes. Just let them do what we need them for, and not go too deep into details.
Sure. I think that you absolutely nailed it there. That's a perfect advantage of it. We can kind of get the best bits and not have to worry too much about the right things, and then just move on to the next thing. And obviously, if it does come out pretty messed up, just paint over it, and it's all good.
Exactly.
And I guess even if you got to hand over an asset and it's pretty crude, I'm sure that person, as skilled as they are, can just make it right in no time.
Oh yeah, I actually had that a lot with my Division 2 work.
Yeah.
Like I would do a lot of my Division 2 props in ZBrush, and later hand over the 3D models to the character artists or whoever's gonna work on that prop artist. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they were like super unoptimized. Like they couldn't just use them as they were, pretty much. So they had to trace them. But then again, there are like a lot of tools to get that done really quick.
That's cool.
But I don't have to really care about that. I mean, if if I'm faster, working carelessly and ignoring some things, and people can, like art directors, can iterate on the outcomes quicker. It overall becomes a more efficient process, I feel.
And again, back to what we mentioned earlier, it's all about the outcome, all about the result.
Exactly.
There's no point in being precious about things, even if maybe, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who can get precious over their work and their workflow, but it's definitely take note and just try and let things go. If it's all about the end result, if it's got to be painted over crudely, let it happen.
Exactly.
Ultimately, if that thing becomes successful, like whether it's an asset or a prop or a piece of art, and it takes that project or that thing to another level, that's a job well done. There's more satisfaction in that than having things done in a particular way.
Yes, exactly.
So what got you into Maya? Is that the first package you picked up and you kind of never let go from it, or
no?
Did you try?
Yeah, I think that is like kind of deriving from my times when I was doing movie editing.
Yeah.
I started with Cinema 4D, but then there was like another YouTuber that had like he extracted in-game models and also had them animated, and I wanted to do that as well. And apparently that particular game had Maya in their pipeline, so it was very easy, if you just export and extract things from the game to set that up in Maya right away. And that's where I got into contact with that first. And I think Maya is just the same as 3ds Max. Those two tools are just like they were known to be like the industry standard. So I thought it might be smart to pick them up, although nowadays it seems to go more into Blender direction.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same. I think at university, that's the two softwares we started off with. But the first one was Alias Studio, which is more for like automotive modeling and all that kind of stuff, more NURBS based. And then did a placement, and it was Maya. And that's it. It was just the first thing I ended up picking up, and I'm still using it as well. Although I'm consciously trying to migrate things to Blender. For the obvious advantages I'm sure you've read up on, and I'm sure a lot of listeners have seen too, in terms of obviously it's free, which helps. And the fact that it seems like it's always expanding, it's always improving, but it looks like it's got like 4 or 5 different softwares in one.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was at uni, when I started using Maya, Blender was around then, and it was so bad in sense of like you can see it was obviously I respected that it was a hobbyist thing and people just keeping it open source, which is I think is very respectful and almost like it's going to pave the way for a lot of things going forward now. But it just was never at that point. It was never at that level of you could do high end stuff in a professional way, in a timely way. But now it's just completely changed, and you see things like so many top end artists using Blender to a high level on AAA projects. It just that speaks for itself.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And have you had a play with Blender much or?
No, I installed it, but I didn't even like try it yet.
Yeah.
I need like a basics tutorial or something first.
I'm the same. I've had it installed and I've got like a few of the plugins that a lot of people are using because it seems to suit how I do my work, but it just hasn't clicked with me yet to the point where the first thing I want to go to is that to solve my problem. But I remember having a similar thing with Fusion 360 first. Very easy software. Do you use it yourself? Have you used it?
Yes. I'm not good at it though.
But I'm pretty sure you'd agree that it doesn't take long to get into in terms of how to see how it works. But I remember for a while I was just like, it felt a bit weird because I kept using the way you navigate and tumble around a model in Maya, trying to do it in Fusion 360, and it wasn't the same. It just gets a bit confusing. But then slowly over time, it just became like, this is my thing. And even with Substance Painter, at first I was like, oh, this just seems like a complete headache. Then I found a way you can quickly get crude UV stuff, and now it's almost like my go-to. And interestingly, you can, for me, that feels like a Keyshot 2.0 kind of thing, because you can drag and drop materials the same way you can do on Keyshot. You can be more flexible with them because it acts like Photoshop with the materials. Just paint over it, and if you need to, it has a similar kind of. I think it uses iRay from NVIDIA, but you can all in that particular package. You can just get your render out if you need to do any paint overs and stuff. But there's all these little tools
it's
and
super
stuff.
powerful.
But I remember even with Maya, I remember at first, I don't like this. I didn't like 3D modeling at first. I just thought, let's just stick with sketching. And now it's kind of gone full circle where it's just 3D.
Yeah, I also like in Maya, I have my very own way of modeling, and I'm pretty sure if like an actual modeler would look over my shoulder, they would like shake their heads because I'm always using the edge loop tool, and I realized very late that I could just extrude the face,
right,
and I was always inserting like the edge loop and then just move the face to its left or either right, like super weird way, but I just that was just the way I worked with it. And
is that something you picked up, or was it like you followed a tutorial once? Or was that just the way it worked for you because it worked the first time you tried it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there are these little things that you're not doing in the way they're supposed to, and then I guess it's because I figured that out by myself without like really having it seen anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting one as well. Like learning is so strange in the sense that it's great, you're always improving, but sometimes you can take a path that even though you're improving is completely the opposite way that most of the people do it, and there's more efficient way to do it, and I can relate to that, similar to like making music. I do all on software. I'm not like a musician or anything. I don't even know how to speak to a musician about music stuff, but in my head I just know it clicks with the softwares that I use. And similar thing, it was just I got it, started playing with it, things started to work, and then it just kind of went from there. I guess our children just learn things and just experiment until things work. But I'm pretty sure if a musician or a producer saw how I'm doing stuff now, their soul would shake, because I'm pretty sure I'm doing stuff that's like in a very inefficient way. I'm thinking, what are you doing there?
But also, like I had it also often that I was looking at tutorials, learning from them, and then basically improved how they were doing things.
Of course,
build with how they were doing it,
Yeah.
basically.
And I think
You,
that's
you do, yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah, go on.
I'm done.
Okay.
That was it.
I totally agree, and it's quite important, especially with any kind of tutorial or any kind of learning material. It's like this is knowledge from that particular mind or
Mhm.
school of thought, and although it's proven, although it's tested, again, we're all different. We can't all wear the same pair of shoes because they're different sizes and whatnot. So it's very important to have an open mind when you pick it up, learn it, do it the way. If you're struggling with it, do it the way that you can see it, and then just let your own style take over eventually as well. And yeah, I think that's a good segue also into the. So yeah, just a quick one for the listeners. By the time you listen to this, our article with Lars is probably out right now. And in that's with your space breaker.
Space breaker.
Space
Yeah.
breaker. Which is, I personally, when I first saw it, my jaw literally dropped. This is sick. But yeah, it's just basically you with your breakdown of this and how you made it and etc. etc. And early on, you spoke about two courses in particular you took with us, and that was futuristic character design with Mache and concepting in ZBrush with Alex Houdini. And obviously, you mentioned in there as well how they gave you, forgive me if I'm quoting you wrong, they gave you an intro into a particular workflow, and then obviously you've made it, like you said, your own. How much has it differed from what the guys taught in the courses? Has it differed much, or is it just like only a few degrees just so it's good for you, but it's kind of the same? Or
no, it's like so. I mean, first of all, like I basically like I mean, I can pretty much say I ripped off the way their pipeline worked. I mean, how the software interacts with each other. But while working with it with some time, and I actually haven't updated my software really. I found, these tiny tricks here and there that basically made some things easier, but that's also because it's basically comes with when you keep using something that somebody figured out for you pretty much. But also I developed pretty much my own hard surface techniques, like in ZBrush.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. And also like you add to everything, you learn like a bit of this personal flavor, because you have different tastes in certain things.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you kind of tweak some things differently to get different results and so on. But overall, it's like pretty much what these courses taught me. So
that's cool, man. And your learning journey up until now, so that's what I've been like, I think, did you take them when they first came out, or did you take them a little bit after? Because I think they came out in like, was it 2015 or 16?
Yeah, I remember it because I was in one of the Learnsquared breakdowns before, and I recall that I was saying that I took the Alex Houdini course right when I came back from Spain. That was around Christmas time and New Year's. So I did that right when it came out, and I also like tried to finish it as one of the first guys. I cannot remember with the character design course from Mache, but actually that course like opened me many doors, because there was like I had an artwork that came out from this course that I think I used for my first application actually to get into the games industry. And I mean, once you took such a course and you basically made it from start to finish, the result will of course have very high quality, and if you can show that to in your application, that's gonna speak for itself, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I've just started to take Alex Virgini's one. I wanted to do it since it came out, but I just kept putting it off because at that point in time I was just like, I'm not ready for ZBrush yet. So I just kept putting it to one side. But I did take character design as well, Mache, and I can relate to you in that regard. And in the sense that, like, when I was doing it, I was somehow fell into doing every days, and I think I was like 6 months through, and I leveled up a lot during that because I was doing things in a short amount of time, basically a couple of hours, that literally would take me months beforehand, just because I never had the workflow, I never had the knowledge to solve those problems in a quicker way. And after taking his course, obviously the workflow with Fusion 360 and rendering and more using 3D and photo bashing, all that kind of stuff. I remember as soon as I started taking it, even from the first lesson, I think, my everydays had completely changed in terms of quality, with almost in like the space of a couple of days. Just that extra bit of knowledge. But then ultimately, when it ended, when I finished the course up, I went from like, because I was like doing things that I don't do characters, so I was quite happy with how that turned out, considering it was technically my first proper one for God knows how long, or if not ever. But then I remember being disappointed because how much I'd learned, and they were doing this thing because I wasn't working for Learnsquared at the time. They just handpicked a couple of guys, and I managed to get one-on-one mentorship with Mache to do it as well. And
nice.
The things he was asking me and questioning, I remember starting off with like, oh, this is the first week, I'm just going to do this, I've ticked it off, let's get to the next week, almost like a checklist. And then I remember, like, I think week 3 or 4, Mache was less concerned with how do I complete the task, and it was more like the profound questions and the fundamental questions of like, what does this design actually mean? Does this design make sense? And I can go back and change this. And that really messed with me a little bit in thinking that, I was like, and it made me also realize after a while, thinking about it more, that because I was so into the everyday thing, like completing one thing and moving on, completing one thing and moving on, which has its advantages. That's all it became about. And he kind of realigned my perspective to where it should be. It's about less just completing loads of stuff and making it the best thing it can be and solving those problems. So after that, because of the way how the mentorship went, although the work was decent, I felt like I could do more, I could do better. And it also opened my eyes to where my flaws really were. So yeah. And then ever since then, obviously back to that workflow and stuff, similar kind of workflow, but it has adapted to my needs and how I like to do things. And I cut corners here, but I don't cut corners on certain things. But yeah, I can relate to you in that sense, that it completely open doors or set you on a path and a workflow that is successful. For me, it's successful in terms of like how I get stuff done. So yeah, I'm always grateful for that, and not looked back since.
Yeah. I mean, like you're saying, when you take such a course and you're getting invested in, and you're trying to make the best outcome ever. It was the same for me. Like you're pretty happy with it in the end, maybe, but then after a week or so, you're like, I could do way better.
Yeah,
and then that's when you're like, basically start, fiddling around with that workflow and do other projects with it as well.
Exactly. And I think that's important as well. Like, do you go back to old projects much?
Not much. Sometimes I grab assets that I already made,
for sure.
So, but I sometimes it actually feels like I'm wasting some potential here and there, because like I made like this whole corridor and these two guys perfectly posed, and I just rendered out one shot and then leave that basically on my drive forever. It's like, okay, but yeah, that's how it is sometimes.
Yeah, I think we've all got that. We've got like a big pile of unfinished stuff that for whatever reason, either we're just mentally tired of it, or it happened so long ago it takes you back to that traumatic time where you don't want to do things anymore. We just leave it. But yeah, I think there's some that I do want to get back to, and do finish it off. But then you're always looking forward at the same time and thinking, that's exciting. Let's try something new. But yeah, I think one thing as well is after finishing that course and other things as well, it's almost like, okay, this was cool. I have definitely leveled up, and there's no way that if I attempted this before the course, it'd look anything like this. But it's almost like a sign of evolution that you're already looking at the flaws of it and want to improve more and move on to the next one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And like you mentioned as well, like sometimes you look back thinking, okay, that could improve there. And then as weeks and months and years pass, you're thinking, what the hell was I thinking? That is atrocious.
I mean, just that hand we are looking on at your screen right now. I redid this thing a couple of times because I didn't really like it, but I mean, I had it at the point where I was like, yeah, this is actually good. But then one day later, I'm like, or I see something else somewhere, and I'm like, no, I can do this way better. And then you just redo it. And I mean, you could apply this pretty much all the time. And that's when you're pushing a project basically. And that's when you also improve. I think when you're like actually struggling with the design, or you're not really liking it, and you think, like you're saying, I can do better.
Yeah. And like, I think that's a good thing, because one of the things with the Mache's course that kept cropping up was the conversation about design. It's like, this doesn't make sense, or, why would you do this? Because it was almost like aesthetics took over design. When it comes to design, ultimately it's like the aesthetics are almost like a consequence of the design. So design's like a big huge topic, and it takes a lifetime to even, I wouldn't even say master, almost like to get a good understanding of before you can master it. But obviously that's also a big difference between why a project's successful and why it isn't, and why some things are very loved, and why things some are just rejected outright. And in terms of like this project overall, it's almost like every single section is designed individual, which you've shown with certain elements of it as well. And in theory, that could be the whole project by itself, just the backpack alone. Obviously, you've done it for the whole character. So with the gloves in particular, did you have that with any other areas where it was kind of a lot of back and forth? By trying something, then going back and changing it, and then would a change in, say, the glove, for example, influence a changing something else?
I mean,
how did you solve that?
So can you repeat the question? I think I didn't really understand.
Oh no, sure. So essentially, I guess let's approach it this way. How did you approach the this piece?
Okay. So basically, how it got started was that it's actually started with the rifle of this dude.
Yeah.
And it was because I have this other project. It's called the Space Sniper, and there was a big Reddit post about it. People like,
when it came out, that was like, obviously there's a lot of stuff that you see online and stuff, and it's very cool, but this is one of those ones that definitely got my attention, and I'm sure a lot of people's as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I mean, there was like a Reddit post about it, and there were people having this it was like a healthy discussion. I'd say it was about, they were arguing about if this is possible or accurate, or what does this thing
even do. Were they artists, or were they scientists or engineers, or were they just
no, I think just people gathering on Reddit. They could have all sorts of backgrounds that I don't know, but sure. And they probably got also their knowledge from other sides, but it was just interesting to go through it, and there were some very interesting comments regarding this thing being either like, if it would fire projectiles, if the, through the gravity or through the impact, or how you call it, the recoil, would like, twist this dude around into space. And there were like these insane theories about it. And so I was thinking, okay, so there is some potential in this. I mean, discussions, either if they go, for or against it, if they are, staying in like let's say in the realm of is this realistic or not? I think there is like a lot of potential to, improve it either, or make it more obvious so people can understand what's going on. So if you go back to the other project and you take a look at this rifle I did, so it's basically I found some cool videos on YouTube where like a guy in his basement built like a rifle with like blue laser LEDs.
Okay.
And I found that quite interesting, because he was basically holding this weapon with a laser beam, and you could like literally like see that laser beam. It already had like a very sci-fi element to it, although it was very realistic. And he was able to just pop some balloons. So I basically took that principle and how to say, added something similar to LEDs and just gave that thing like a whole big unit behind it, and you could feed it with batteries, and it has like an adjustable lens in the front depending on how far you want to fire that thing. And then also, having a laser in space, I found that like quite interesting, because you could literally like, I mean, it's quite dangerous if you just phase through a window of the ISS or something. The whole thing will pretty much, I don't know, implode or something, if there's suddenly a hole somewhere, And I found that like super strong as an idea. So I was just basically going for it. And at the same time, I was trying, to make it a bit different looking than a regular gun. More like a toy almost, I'd say, or like a tool. And I pushed it quite far. Like, as you can see on the right, there are like thumbnails. And it went through a couple of different design stages. I wanted it to also look cool from first person view. And I was also thinking of like how you would basically feed it with this battery. So you would basically like have like a push and release mechanism. So you could push the battery in, and then if you push it back in again, it would basically like, jump out. And and how far I pushed that, then I had like designed a hand glove that would actually hold that thing. So
it stemmed
I wanted
from the rifle initially, right?
Yeah, like if you scroll to the hand, you can you can see on the right that it's like a hand scan I downloaded somewhere.
Oh yes.
And I just like change the pose of it a bit and basically put it in the hand and see how everything would function, in terms of how can you reach everything, how would it feel to hold it with both hands, and so on. And from there on, I basically started off with a Dust 3D character and then built all the other props around it, because I was like, okay, this is already, how to say, becoming something. And the more I believed in this whole project, the more I thought I could do with it, and basically try to push each individual element. And I think it was also a really good exercise, because, I see a lot of characters and so on, and you can just tell that, people just stopped at some point, And
sure.
And I think with this project, I just wanted to see, like, I mean, I even did some design on the fingertips, and even the goggles that you cannot really see that the character would have underneath his helmet, and so on. And there's a whole, of course, it's, in the realm of sci-fi, and it's a bit
for
crazy
sure,
and over the top sometimes, but everything has like thought out function, and like for example this golden thing he has next to his helmet is like based on like these military, I don't really know the name of it, but it's like a defense system. So
I see, yes.
you would have this tiny speed camera that would basically check the distance of like an incoming bullet, and the closer it gets, it could basically like have a very precise counter, like microwave or something to basically block it off, and it's like based on technology that really exists. They're like crazy things the military use, like where they would basically make like if you would shoot a rocket on the truck or something, they have this weird things that would basically cause the missile to explode before impact,
Right.
and it's invisible, you don't see it, and I mean, I put this in this tiny box next to his helmet because things become smaller in the future. But and then also on the backpack, that it has these two eyes on the left and the right. They're providing the dude inside with like 180 degree vision, and also it has back cameras as well, because this backpack is quite massive, of course. And there's like, I thought of all the spacing within this thing as well, like where would hardware go, where would like pipes go, or the oxygen tank, and these type of things.
That's super sick.
And the thing on the top is like a connection piece to connect it to the helmet and so on.
Yeah, even although
there's a lot of thought in it, and
you can tell.
I realize, and I mean, of course, things like a lot of things in here are made up, but if you just spend some time thinking about things, always the designs they click more. Like when you look at them, you are more impressed by it because you just think they make sense, although they may not make 100% sense. You know what I mean?
100%. And especially for entertainment design, which is the field that we're in. This is the perfect approach, in my opinion. It's believable. Like when you look at it at first glance, it sells exactly. You know it's an astronaut. Then your eyes wander around a bit, and okay, this is a military type thing. And then again, you look at it all, and it just looks like something that you've seen before, but you haven't. Visually with the visual library that most people have with astronauts, the gloves kind of look like that. The helmet looks like that. Backpacks look like that. The boots look like that. But obviously, if you were to compare them, they don't.
Yeah.
But then it's still close enough, and obviously take liberties with that. But now this is
I mean, it's like I try to always, especially in my latest projects, like try to keep a good ratio of entertainment value and functionality, and you get like interesting level of believability if you're like keep things very grounded.
Is that something that you consciously do? Was that something that just kind of you've coached yourself into like just doing automatically?
No, I try to, like, everything I design is based on existing things. Always I try to keep it like super grounded with everything, but only add like this subtle layer of sci-fi on top. I don't want to go too sci-fi. So that's why that's why this guy has this clunky backpack and not like a tiny I don't know transformer suit or something.
And to do that, do you have like a mood board open at all times? Obviously you mentioned that you do a ton of research beforehand, but is your research process you absorb and then go at it, or do you have stuff in the background to refer to constantly?
Yeah, like I mean, in this particular project, like each piece is basically based on its real existing, let's say, counterpiece.
Okay. Like it's a bit of a remix on what actually exists.
Yes, exactly. Like, I mean, for example, he has these pouches on the belly. They are like those military pouches that exist just with that space material, as an example. Or the backpack is based on these NASA jetpacks. They actually exist, just redesign of that with a bit of different function.
Like even the lines you've got on the material, just looking at that, you already know what kind of material it's going to feel like.
Yeah.
So obviously with this particular one, it literally stemmed from this. Then it expanded literally into this.
Yes.
Was that ever the plan, or just the natural path that everything?
No, it just organically developed into that. I mean,
I love it like that.
Yeah. But I also have to I also mentioned them in the comment in the description of this project.
Uh-huh.
I also want to shout out to Peter Sutherland is his name, and Johnson Ting also gave me like a final push for it. Like I'm also, what really helps sometimes is just sending your work out to some people.
Yeah.
Like
do you know Peter and Johnson well, or do you just like reach out to them?
Yeah, I know Peter very well. Yeah, he's. I was working with him together at Crytek. He's like a ex FCD student. And he became like incredibly good, especially with like prop design. Like he's far beyond me. He doesn't have an art station though, but he's really good. And and I of course sometimes send my stuff to him, and he just gave me some feedback or pointers, and or even like sometimes say, oh, this here doesn't make any sense, and you would not have thought of that at all. So I think that's also something I would encourage people to do while you're working on something. Like let it basically become more or less bulletproof by sending it to somebody. So because it can be very annoying if you post it or something and it's out there and things are wrong. Like with this project, for example, I had some wrong Russian labels in the beginning.
Okay.
And that was like, you could see there were a lot of people commenting even in Russian language, and basically pointing out that this wording doesn't exist like this. It's
right.
So, and then I just send it to a few people from my friend list that know Russian, and basically let them help me with that as well. So
now you need definitely have that mini little tribe or people that you can approach, that you trust as well. More importantly, that that will give you not just feedback but honest feedback. And
yes.
At the same time, be humble enough to accept it as well. Last thing you need is to be precious about something, like I mentioned before, when there's no need to be precious about it if it means your project will be better overall.
Yes, absolutely.
How long did the gun take you? Was it like on and off thing? I'm sure it was between work and stuff.
Yeah, on and off.
Right.
I think this entire project took me maybe a month and a bit longer.
The entirety, the full astronaut and everything?
Yeah, like all these images together.
That's still a good turnaround. 4 weeks?
But I mean, it was like every day a bit, and also once you have each individual piece, the final is done fairly quick.
Got it. Yeah. Was it enjoyable throughout, or did they get to the point where it kind of got a bit annoying for you to complete, or was there like a drive to really see this through? Because obviously you should agree that some projects you just think, what am I doing? I can't wait for this to finish. And then some you like,
no, I'm always struggling. Like there's always struggle in those projects. So you just need to kind of trick your mind and just go through it, basically.
Just power through.
Like for example, with this gun, there was actually because it also it became easier, I felt, later on. But this gun, although it might not be the best looking gun or something, but just so I was happy with it to get it there, because that took some time. Of course, it had some weird handles and weird visors, and nothing was really working together. And that's something where you just have to iterate on and just keep trying and trying and trying until you have it.
Is that something you do often? Like, let's say something does become a bit of a, not so much a stumbling block, but like you mentioned, if something's not working, like a handle or a certain element of a design, is your approach to always kind of like just keep going and power through it, or do you have other ways to resolve those?
Yeah, I think like what is important when you keep pushing a project and you want to try to finish it is to keep like consciously working on it and not like being absent kind of and trying to doodle around to make it work basically. So I you need to basically try and set yourself in a mood where you're like, oh, now I want to really solve this thing here. And I don't know, sometimes that just works. If like I think for this particular project I kind of built a routine, every day after work a bit. It's a bit like a workout, and then it becomes easier, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And how did you find it? So when you got the assets all together, you mentioned obviously you did kind of go quicker because you had all the things, all the building blocks. And I know you mentioned in the article as well, there were certain moments that you ended up adjusting because it didn't work with other things.
Yes.
How did that come about? Like, do you do a review process of your work? Did you almost like art direct your own piece? Or was that something that was kind of was glaringly obvious to you quite early on and you thought, I'm definitely going to resolve this?
No, I also like look a lot at it. I try to, for example, I send like work in progress files to my phone as well. So when I'm in the bus or something, I just keep looking at it, and then I'm like, I don't like, this is not the same design language as this. Like, this is super rounded here, but here we have sharp corners and stuff like that. And I and those are just things you just need to kind of have a like internal discussion with yourself and that project, and then you will basically, once you're home and you really want to work on it, then you can change all these things.
I think that's super important. Like, I think it's quite easy, or at least from my perspective, from my experience with my own personal stuff, is sometimes you just get a bit complacent with it and just kind of done. You feel I'm done with this and just send it out. But I'll do that sometimes as well. Like, I will send stuff to my phone, check things on the commute just to kind of just observe it, because you're in an environment where you can't work on it, so you just have to look at it. And it kind of forces you to spot certain things as well. I don't do it enough, but as you've proven that it definitely does work. So that's pretty sweet, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think just interacting with your own project is important. Like, and also but then also what is also a good method actually is to get some distance to your project. If you're not looking at it for some time, and then revisiting it can also boost it. I think
100%.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a play, I think.
No, for sure. Like, I've done one thing. I've actually held it off for quite a while. I went back onto it a couple of weeks ago. I think towards the end of the year, and I kind of got a swing of things, and then I kind of let it go again because I knew that. Because time-wise for me, I just get like pockets of time as opposed to like days, and certain days I get work. Just like I got some time free, let's get it done, etc., etc.
That's difficult, yeah.
But then I thought, if I start it now, I'm just going to end up finishing it just for the sake of finishing it, and I want it to be like a really good project. So I kind of put it on the back burner. I got like, there's no point in rushing to send it out. I'm not making money off it. It's not gonna. There's no deadline for it, so there's no point in trying to force it. And then there's other things that you just like you'll do on a rush through and get it over and done with. But I think that's super important. Always get that distance, and like you mentioned, also just to summarize, get feedback. Sometimes even with distance, you still might not be able to see what needs to be seen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then because we have our biases, or not even that, we have our blind spots that other people can see for whatever reasons. And 100%, that's definitely something worth considering. Do you plan any more? Is that this a series of things, or is this like a one-off? Because obviously you started off with the Space Sniper, and this is kind of like would you call it a spiritual sequel to that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just enjoy like working with all the space stuff at the moment.
Yeah, man.
I think it's really cool. I just like it because it's it is a topic more or less that is ongoing. You can see space stuff, what we have right now, and that is always super impressive. I'm super curious about space travel in general.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
have you always been like that? Like even whilst younger, was that like something that you kind of got into as you've gotten older?
Yeah, when I was like 12 years old, I went with my father to Florida, to Cape Canaveral. And I was there in the NASA center, and that was super inspiring. I think I was looking lately at some old pictures, and back then the cameras had like super low resolution. But I basically have a photo pack now that is pretty much showing all that stuff in high res now, and it's just super inspiring to look at all these things, all the crazy rockets and the materials even and stuff like that. It's super cool.
And it's like I'm the same. I've been obsessed with space since I don't even know how long. And I think when I was growing up, there's two jobs I wanted to do. One was being an archaeologist because I think I watched Jurassic Park, and the other was being an astronaut because just because space is just so cool. And never got to be any of those, but nevertheless, you can dream. But yeah, it's weird how like little things. I mean, maybe perhaps without that visit, it would not have maybe been as interested in things. But it's interesting how like little things like just having a visit or a holiday can have a massive influence on you later on. I mean, I'm guessing even if, let's say, you weren't an artist, maybe you're a doctor or something, you still have that fascination with space and space travel, etc. But
absolutely. Like traveling in general helps a lot. Like I was in Norway recently, and sometimes you see pictures with big scale on our station with mountains and so on in the background. And when you compare that to how it looks in real life, like it can actually look like concept art. It's insane. Like I saw like a mountain at dawn, and the shadows were so blue it was impossible. Like it looked like fake Photoshop, basically.
Yeah, totally.
and those things are, I think, very good experiences to have as well. I mean, just go outside and
100%.
have a look.
100%. I totally concur with that. Even like if it's or not just some major trips, even like locally, anywhere you have. You have.
Absolutely.
We have like a park near us, and normally when the weather's better, we'd always go out at least once a week, take my daughter with a bike, go around and stuff. Sometimes I take my camera too because it's quite peaceful then, and it's not like the most picturesque, but there's always some cool stuff. Like there's a cool dead log that was there, and there's always an angle that looks a bit concept arty and certain things. And my daughter's school's near there as well, and I think it was last week or about a month ago maybe. It was all fogged up. So it just looked like literally a value painting because just an atmospheric perspective everywhere. And, I've just got loads of pictures I'm going to paint over because it just looked like, awesome renders that I can't get on the computer compared to that. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
I even sometimes get excited about a stupid, rain puddle on the ground or something.
Dude, rain puddles are the best.
Just because, nobody would really care, I think. But, we do.
Exactly. What was it? I was watching a documentary on something completely unrelated, and they had a shot inside the car, and they showed the windscreen. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a nice way the dirt is kind of like gathered on the corner there. That's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure nobody else watching that would have even saw that as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like back to like concept, nature looking like concept art. Even the clouds are probably the thing that looks like a painting the most. I remember like
Yes.
I don't know, maybe it's just the way where we are over here. We seem to get quite a different variety of different clouds and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like we're not like in a mountainous area because England's pretty flat in most parts, but it's quite elevated.
Yeah.
So like there's always like you can kind of see stuff, and yeah, there's just always weird cloud formations and stuff like that, and sometimes it literally looks like that's not even a photo batch. That's just almost like a painting you can just slap on
Yeah, yeah.
a picture straight away. And like even then, mentioned about traveling and stuff. A few years back, with work, I work in sales, and they had an incentive and they sent us on a skiing trip, and it
Mm-hmm.
was to Chamonix, so the French Alps, and
Yes.
it
Oh,
was
that's awesome.
it was like so Mont Blanc's there. I think that's the highest peak on the Alps. I'm not too sure, but again, I remember when they said this is the incentive for the prize. I was like, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
go somewhere cold. I want to go somewhere warm because I never really went on any kind of trip like that. But then as soon as I got there, and the way this like obviously you've been around the mountains area you just mentioned about Norway, you just can't put that scale properly on an image unless you're there.
Oh, yeah,
And like
absolutely.
we literally like I think the hotel was like at the foot of the mountain, so you're always looking up like a 45
Yeah.
degree angle just to see what's around you, and the views are just I don't see how anyone can get bored of that. And
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
quite profound. We see pictures all the time. If you got a Windows PC or even the Mac, you always got these beautiful images of nature and stuff. But there's something completely different to when you actually see it in the flesh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
And I know it's mentioned to death, but people always say like build your visual library. And when you
Yeah.
see things like that, when you're painting it in, it changes from how do I mimic this to how do I get that feeling that I had when I saw that last time, and how do I get that onto the image? It's like there's almost
Oh, yeah, yeah.
an extra dimension to it on that as well. But yeah, sorry, back to the space stuff. And I guess like from back then, it was more a case of like a wonder of like how did these things come to be, and you see these things, almost like put on display, or you see them on the video clips, and you
Yes.
just dream about like space. Where could you end up? What's it going to be like to explore other planets, or even just the rest of the solar system? All that kind of stuff, right? And even just like looking at a launch pad and just the way they send up rockets and space shuttles and stuff, it's just epic on all levels. From the amount of energy that gets used with the plumes of
Yeah,
flame and
yes,
stuff,
yes.
and then the sounds and all that kind of stuff. It's just so like on all levels, on on an acoustic level, on a visual level, on a philosophical level, it just hits all those notes. But
Yes,
it's interesting now where it's almost becoming more of a reality, because
yes.
SpaceX was almost the stuff you dream about in concept art or in like science fiction films, and then the way you see their rockets, like reusable rockets when they land back down,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like something from a film, but it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
And it also
Yeah,
makes
absolutely.
it more. It's interesting to see how art is going to now, how us artists will treat space exploration now, because
Yeah.
with all these advancements and all these technologies that you can do, where would it go? Because before it was almost like, how do we fill that gap of if we were to do this? Now we are doing this, so what are the solutions to it? And I think obviously with your, even though you mentioned that it is for like entertainment purposes, this Space Breaker piece is more in line with that, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. I think so, yeah.
And like
Mm.
just off topic a bit with art and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, where do you see space travel now going forward? Like, what would you like to see next, or what do you think was probably going to happen going forward? Like, what would be the next big advancement?
Like a city on Mars or something.
Damn.
Like a
Do you think
like,
we'd ever see that in our lifetime?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, there are people pushing it forward,
Yeah.
right? And I think things like this can happen faster as we'd expect.
Yeah.
I mean, if I just talk to my grandparents, they're like, they also can't believe some things they can still experience in their lifetime, basically.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility for sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, obviously back in the '60s when they first put, people on the moon, to let alone space exploration, the technology as a result of that, to what's changed since then to now. Let's say, in another 30, 40 years, what is going to be the norm? Like back then, they're speculating like what is space travel going to mean for humanity, etc. Now, obviously, in our age, we kind of know it's going to be wherever it is now, and then the fantasy what it could be back then to see what it's going to be then is it's going to be something. It's just great food for thought for an artist just to see those those questions. And I think the beauty of it is like we always want to, maybe not the one that wants to come up with the answer, but it's interesting to play with that question and try and come up with answers for it.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty sweet. In terms of like space stuff, obviously you've been to see in things in exhibitions and museums. You went to Florida, for example. What about like in terms of media or like films and stuff? What kind of stuff inspires you? Like, what's your favorite space film?
Yeah, so I have to say at that point, like I have no taste really in like movies or music or that type of stuff.
Yeah,
it's like when you're having talks with colleagues, I'm always the one that either doesn't really know what people are talking about, or
Okay.
or I have a completely different opinion even sometimes. Like for example, I liked the Blade Runner movie. I liked Interstellar.
Yeah,
that was quite cool.
Yeah, man.
Like I'm talking right now of sci-fi movies, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
But like the classic movies that you should see when it comes to space stuff, I actually haven't seen a lot of them. Like I think there is Moon, and
Moon's cool.
I have to watch that. And I think, is it Space Odyssey? I've
2001.
I've only seen shots from that. I heard it's interesting, but I don't know.
Once you see it, you'll see basically that Interstellar is as much a love story to that as it is its own film. But yeah, 2001, I think I've seen a fair few, but again, I don't think I've seen them all because I like all kinds of I'm heavily into films and entertainment and stuff. And I'd watch pretty much anything sci-fi. I'll give it a chance at least, right? But aside from the fantastical ones that, just completely far-fetched and borderline on fantasy in terms of their approach, in terms of something that's kind of considered proper science fiction or trying to predict what the future would likely be, possibly 2001 is maybe one of the most important. I'd call it like how Shakespeare is to literature. 2001 is probably like that for space films and exploration and stuff. On loads of different levels in terms of how the film was made, considering the time it was made, the design, the way that it was it was a film. Is it more like a piece of futurism as opposed to a piece of entertainment? But it had its own little philosophies as well, which is pretty neat.
I got to watch Star Wars more lately, but just for the design's sake, and they have some really nice interior designs.
Totally.
They're really cool.
Yeah, with Star Wars, I think what I've always liked about Star Wars is because that's probably one of the most influential things for myself to even want to do concept art, and I tend to do a lot of spaceships and stuff anyway. Again, mainly because of a lot of sci-fi stuff, but Star Wars is definitely one of them because it's got a vast amount of variety of spaceships, and not just because they look cool, but like I mentioned before, it makes your mind wander, thinking, "What's the purpose of that? Where did it come from?" And obviously, like, every different species and section has all that kind of stuff.
But I especially like the fact that a lot of the Star Wars stuff is, like grounded in World War II.
Exactly. Because when they designed it, obviously it was the echoes of the World War still was fresh in the mind of the designers, and a lot of their reference point was those kind of things. Like if you hear the sound effects, it's a lot based on a lot of the sound effects of the vehicles from back in that era, from the wars and stuff.
Yes.
And obviously with their production methods back then, there was no CGI, so you had to craft it. So everything was physical. Everything was lit with real light and caught in camera, as opposed to made in CGI.
That's super inspiring.
They had to obey the laws of physics. And obviously, in terms of our age, although we're getting a lot more digital now and things more touchscreen now, it all looked analog, which was great. And looking back at it now, or thinking about it now, it just looks more like Star Wars is almost like a fantasy steampunk type thing. It's like
that's true.
They use these things, but they don't look like experts in them. It's almost like they don't know where they came from. Whereas, like, you look at Star Trek and things like that, their technology suits their era, etc. But yeah, I think it's fascinating, and obviously a lot of it is because of how it was made back then. Trying to keep the continuity there, but I think that works in its favor.
I learned recently, which is super interesting, that in the Star Wars universe, you will not find any paper.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Yes.
Like they have no paper. They only have like a book or something but that's from an era before. So
of course,
it raises some interesting questions. But it's a cool thing, I think.
Yeah, man.
But I also feel like with a lot of sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
Nowadays, maybe not nowadays, but some sci-fi movies I recall where they had sci-fi designs, I sometimes have a bit of a disconnect with some of the designs, just because it's like I don't know how to call it, but it's not based on something really, or at least I don't really see it. It's like too sci-fi sometimes.
Yes, I think that's where, like, you're absolutely right. And I think some of the ones that make a good balance of it. I mean, like Alien is a good one.
Oh yeah, Alien is super awesome. Actually, I don't know why I haven't mentioned that at first. Like,
it's like Sid Mead had a big influence on that, I believe. So that is, well, I guess, one of the reasons why a lot of the stuff looks great.
I think Giger was.
I think he was more for the creatures, for the xenomorphs, and more for their ship, I believe. But I'm not too sure with that one.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about like the ships from the good guys, I can definitely see some Sid Mead in there.
Well, I'm not sure if he did the first one or the second one, but either way, I'm sure he worked on some of them. But even like all of the films, because not all of them are great. Some of them are not as good. Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are outright classics. But in terms of the aesthetic, they definitely they look more like stuff that we probably expect to see. Obviously, they do take liberties as well. But it looks grounded. Everything looks hard surface mechanical, like it moves. Obviously, with the keep forgetting the name, but that mech thing that Ripley uses in the second one, that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
I know. Which one you mean?
And even
I don't know how it's called.
Even in things like you look at Prometheus and Covenant, the newer ones, I believe I saw a bit where on the latest one, which I think is Covenant, tested the Mythbusters guys. They showed how the suit was made, and it was all well made. Like, it was all articulated fingers and the gloves, etc. Obviously, if you want to be super specific with it, maybe the materials wouldn't work. Maybe it wouldn't work as to handle space travel. But in terms of, I guess, like your approach with the suit, it linked back to things that we're familiar with. That looks like it belongs where it's supposed to belong, and looks like it's going to work. But
yes.
Those are great examples of making it look futuristic, making it obviously for a film, for a piece of entertainment, something speculative, but then something that does look grounded also. But then you're absolutely right. There's some of them that just look a bit like, for example, the Iron Man suit. As cool as it looks when it's on, I've always thought,
Yeah.
like, where does that actually go? And I'm normally not that particular with those
The
kind of
way
things.
it builds up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite forgiving on that regard because it's like if it's cool, it gets a free pass. But even then, I'm thinking, no, but how does that work? And that kind of stuff. And what
But
about
that
the
was
heat?
that
And yeah,
that is like back to the ratio of functionality
yeah,
and entertainment value. Like I think in
yeah,
the
for sure,
Marvel
for sure.
movies, like the entertainment value beats a lot.
Oh, 100%, 100%, yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like more like superheroes
like
as opposed to sci-fi. So
yeah,
even though there's a lot of sci-fi
shift.
elements to there, it is a bridge. Is it more like on the borderline between sci-fi and superhero, which has its own particular genre and stuff. How about like
Yes, yes.
documentaries? Do you
Yeah,
watch
I
many?
watched one. Like a month ago about black holes,
Cool.
but
Which one was that?
it was one on Netflix.
Right.
I don't know how it was called, but it was quite interesting.
So
I mean,
fascinating.
it was, yeah, exactly. It was quite interesting the way they were talking about scale and like even methods how they basically calculated the distances to other stars and so on. It's quite interesting.
Mad. It's like there's two
They,
levels to it. It's like there's one
yeah,
element of just awe because the scale they mention, like they can put it in numbers and zeros. You just simply cannot fathom how huge and the scale and the distances that are out there. But then at the
yeah.
same time, it's just like, you can't even think up some of this shit. It's like it actually exists right now, but it almost sounds like something from science fiction or the minds of a science fiction writer, for example.
Yeah,
But like Interstellar is a great example. One of the cool things I'm always into. Let me see something new. Take your liberties. Something original, right? But
uh-huh.
then Christopher Nolan's approach to Interstellar was absolutely, I thought, perfect, especially with how they approached the black hole. I'm sure you're familiar with how they did that. They just hired a physicist who made an equation, and then they punched it in a rendering program to simplify it, and that's how it is.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
the black hole that you see is quite iconic because it looks almost like the rings of Saturn in that sense, like a silhouette of that almost. But that was based.
Isn't it like this? Almost like they're just showing that how the light bends around
Exactly,
it.
yeah, exactly. So,
This type of look.
and yeah, that wasn't like, although they did take artistic liberties in terms of like make it look cool for cinema. Um, I believe they
Yeah,
wrote
obviously.
I believe they wrote a scientific paper based on that physicist's findings for this film.
Yeah.
So he did the calculations, gave the visual effects artist the data, they rendered it out, and then interestingly enough, as good as it is for film, it ended up being a scientific paper at the same time. So that black hole that you see on that film is most likely what you're probably going to see if you were physically able to go see one in real life of that scale.
That's
And
super
that is
interesting.
super sick. That actually makes it more cooler than if it was just made up by an artist, for example.
I saw like in this documentary how they basically measured the distances to one of the black holes they saw in space.
Yeah,
Obviously light years away, and
yeah,
it's like they basically send out two satellites to orbit around Earth.
yeah,
So they get this, and they wait basically for days until they are perfectly aligned with
yeah,
their satellite station on Earth. So they
yeah.
have 3 points, and they
Right.
can basically, use the how to say, like what's the name of this thing? Like the this shift that you have inside, like the parallax,
Right,
basically,
right, right,
the
right.
parallax
Yes.
shift, and they use the differences basically to mathematically measure the distance, and it was pretty insane, like the effort,
Crazy.
just to do such a equation, basically.
And it's
That was super inspiring.
yeah, 100%. And it's like these guys have some awesome tech, but at the same time, it's not that sophisticated in the sense that you haven't got all these fancy UI to tell you what it is and stuff. It's just
It's
relying
also
on
interesting when you then see one of their labs and they sit in front of these old computers with like green text,
and it fascinates you even more. Like back in the 60s when they were doing, the space missions to the moon or whatever, the fact that the precision they could achieve just through maths, just through calculations, just through straight raw science and engineering, that they tested it. Well, they did the calculation, they tested it, and it worked. And that's just super fascinating. I mean, even like when they, I've seen some documentaries where they discover like planets and celestial objects and stuff. And you obviously now you have like these telescopes that are pretty sophisticated, but back in the day, all it was, they had like literally two frames. And they go back and forth, and then when one shifted a different way, that was a planet. Or when something blocked the light out, that's a planet or a moon or something. And it's crazy how that approach, which seems so simple, like even a child could do, is how we've gained our knowledge of the universe around us. So it just shows that even like to link it back to doing art and stuff, maybe you don't need every single tool available to you to get something awesome. You just need to know how to use it to its best.
Yes.
But like one documentary I watched recently, a few days ago, in fact, was the Apollo 11 one. It came out last year. Have you seen that?
No. But I will write it down.
It's brilliant. In terms of what you mentioned before about having like low resolution images for like a lot of the old space stuff. So that was, a lot of it was unseen footage, I believe. That was in the archives of NASA. And a lot of it was 70 mil. So like IMAX resolution type things. So there's so many, forget the fact that it's a really cool documentary of how they landed on the moon. Very insightful as well. In terms of a visual library, it's brilliant. You've got like really cool shots inside, outside of the landing area, of all that kind of stuff. I believe the opening shot is, the crawler that NASA have to transport the shuttle and the rockets and stuff. It's just a dude walking in front of that. The scale of it is just so concept art. It's unreal. But that's real life. And you look at it thinking that we've made this as human beings. And it's like better than, anything that most artists could conjure up.
I've seen a picture with a fire truck next to one, and it's like, I think the fire truck is even smaller than the tracks.
Yeah, exactly. Its scale is insane. And even like there's I've got this book. So do you collect many books, or like are you a big reader, or for like art and stuff?
I think I finished reading like one or two books in my life.
What about like for art stuff and reference stuff? Do you have much of those, or same?
I mean, I follow a lot of concept artists, but I like if you're talking about traditional artists, I like the Russian artist Repin.
Cool. How do you spell that?
I will write it to you. It's just his name is Ilya Repin. It's just Repin, but it's like, can I just write it to you?
Yeah, guys.
Yeah, this guy is like super inspiring. You might have seen some of his paintings. He does like I don't even know how to describe it, but very detailed and very realistic stuff.
That's sick. That's I definitely gotta check him out even more. What I was getting at with the books and stuff, it's like I have some art books, etc., but a lot of the stuff I have is more reference stuff, more like textbooks, because when you want to read upon something, it's better to have, something that's, I guess, you can follow, almost like an instruction manual to design something, as opposed to trying to guess it. But I've got this one about the Space Shuttle, and there's some really cool pictures in there of like close-ups of the thrusters, cross sections of the shuttle itself, and there's a really cool thing that they've made
That sounds really cool.
I think for the landing pad, or the launch pad, sorry, they have these huge, I think water jets just to clean it or something. It's just crazy how many proprietary custom things they have just for this one particular mission. Or like, the not mission as such, more like this purpose of just sending shit into space all the time. But I guess, yeah, let's see how the future holds, because now it's not just NASA anymore, and other government agencies. You got like commercial stuff like SpaceX and Blue Origin and a few others and stuff. So let's see what these
which
crazy
I think is really good.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing we can guarantee is in our lifetime, maybe it'd be easier to get a ticket to space, if you can afford it, as opposed to before just dreaming to be an astronaut and such.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, speaking of which, I'm going to send you a link. I've just discovered this dude who I think he takes pictures from the International Space Center, and he time lapses them. So there's
that's really cool.
Basically the view of the Earth, and it's just cool to have in the background whilst you're working. At the same time, it's just really super. It's just awesome. A view from space, very detailed as well. So I'll send that to you as well, because I'm sure that would be good for the older reference library.
I've also seen recently there was like a sort of Kickstarter project for like a book with like space photography, with like photos from space shuttles and thrusters, this type of stuff.
Dude,
but like combined in like a very artsy book kind of.
Interesting. No, I love that.
I can't remember the name.
Like stuff from space, looking down and looking up and that kind of stuff. I just love it.
Man, I can just take screenshots of this.
Exactly.
Use it as background.
It's I think it's like an hour and a half long or something like that. And I remember just watching it all the way through. Not all the way, but I was working at the same time. But it's just something therapeutic about it, having it in the background. And it's just awesome. And in terms of like, I guess for insane. Reference libraries, whether for yourself or anyone listening, NASA have on their website a massive library of like images of like all their missions and satellites and stuff.
They even have 3D models.
Exactly. And some of them are super high res. I think you can even get like, I saw something in Blender. I used it once and never used it again, where I think it was of Mars or something, a particular image file, or I think elevation map or something. You put that into that plugin, and then it turns it into a 3D mesh. I used it on one project. I don't know which one it was, but there's all that kind of stuff to it as well. So NASA's got a huge bunch of high-res free resource shit. So if you're not into it, anyone listening, definitely get into that.
That sounds nice. Like a displacement map, you mean?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, displacement maps. Even just like grayscale images. That could easily be photo bashed to anything in particular. But there's just something cool about high-res images of like worlds and planets and stuff like that are very detailed. I think they're very, very cool.
Sounds awesome.
Cool. So just to tie things up a little bit, so you're at obviously DICE right now.
Yes.
How long have you been there now?
Just for 6 months.
Okay, so it's quite new, right?
Yes.
How did that opportunity come about? Is that something you were looking for? Were you approached?
No, I was contacted from the art director.
Nice.
That was working on Battlefront 2.
Cool.
And he sent me a message if I'm like interested talking about a position. So I took a couple of interviews via Skype. I visited them here in Stockholm. Like Malmö is like 500 kilometers away, so it's like a 4.5 hours train ride.
Oh my gosh!
But it was super nice, and I took it then.
Can you mention what you're working on at the moment, or is it still?
Yes, I can. I'm working on Battlefield 5.
Ah, nice.
Like the game is out. I mean,
How did you
I'm
find that?
doing like live service, and before I was working on Star Wars Battlefront 2 a little bit.
How and what kind of work was it? Was it like you mentioned before, like painting over game engine stuff, or was it quite varied?
Yes, exactly. Like basically production art for games. So whatever gets the job done, pretty much. So if you're like working on a map, for example,
Yeah.
you'd use the engine pretty much
Nice.
to your advantage, or in some instances where, for example, there is no map really, you can like build a little untextured scene,
Yeah.
and texture that yourself in like third-party software. Like I use Octane at work as well, and Maya, and then paint over that pretty much to get like a target image or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I'm working with like super talented guys. Like as I mentioned before, we hired like a couple new dudes, and they're gonna bring new expertise to the entire team, because they use different tools and so on. And there's always something new to pick up and learn. Therefore, so.
And how do you like find it personally? I guess I get the impression that you definitely enjoy it and would prefer it that way. But how do you find working with other talented people or people at the top of their game? How does that influence yourself, your approach to work, and obviously your artwork overall?
Yeah. So I mentioned this also in another Learnsquared interview, that we were talking about, like, if you're not having this opportunity of having like-minded people around you, of like how you can improve your art. And at that point, I didn't really had an answer for it, because it's like very tough to compare to a situation where you don't have it, where you're like, I don't know, have to make friends over Facebook or something, and just have these type of exchanges. But if you like have talented people sitting right next to you, and you see what they're working on, we have these meetings sometimes where we would go, about and just look what people are doing basically, and discuss how things were done and so on. That's like so amazing, because you can every time just stand up, go to the person next to you, and just ask questions, and you it gives you a really good boost. But if you don't have this situation, we were talking about that, you can, as we said also in the beginning of this podcast, that looking at a lot of different things um, might help you, get like a visual library to get your basics down, and you basically train yourself to see things yourself, more or less. And also, like, take tutorials, and basically surround yourself with as many talented people as you can online. But it's super awesome to have just people right next to you, basically, is what I'm saying. It's like instant feedback, or instant solutions to things, but also super inspiring, because it also creates like this super healthy competition, because everyone literally tries their very best at what they're doing. And if somebody, for example, does something very well, and now it's somebody else's turn to either do something to similar quality, or even top that, then you can like have a direct conversation with that person, and basically challenge yourself, and become better at it. And that's really nice, I think.
That's brilliant, man.
Like, I can imagine if you're like a freelancer, always a bit isolated, it becomes, you need to be a very self-disciplined person in order to always step your game up.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. So in studios. So your career so far has exclusively been in studios, right? Or have you had like a
Yes,
freelance
yes.
moment?
I had some freelance gigs.
Has that been like recent in between, or spread out evenly over time, or was that like early on?
Yeah, that's I had one recently.
Okay.
I take like rare opportunities because I mean I work 8 hours a day
Mhm.
already, so just coming home and then take a step back is more appreciated, let's say.
100%. Yeah. It's for
So
anyone
I
out there who's
rarely take
working.
them, but
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, I get to do some.
Yeah. For anyone out there who's working like nonstop, I've had moments like that myself. It's important to take a break, even if you feel like you don't need one. Definitely just take one once a month.
Yeah,
Have a day or weekend, do nothing, or complete opposite from art, then get back to it. Because that burnout can be painful. Until you get back onto
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
grind. But yeah, back to the freelance stuff. So how do you, when you do take it on, and I think that's wise that you take on opportunities when you feel like you can do them, as opposed to just taking anything on at any given time.
Yeah, and I also get to choose, right? Because
Exactly. Yeah.
I can afford to not take it, basically.
Perfect. Exactly. Precisely. Um, but how do you how do you fit that in with studio work, and do you have to declare it with your studio, or is that something that you keep to yourself,
Yes,
or is it quite open?
you're asked to do that.
Okay.
Like you have to um, like you cannot, for example, work for direct
Of
competitors
course.
and stuff
Yes.
like
Yes.
that. So, for example, if you get to work on something like a demo project that has more to do with film or something,
Mm.
uh, and you can basically guarantee your company that it's not gonna take you too much time, let's
Oh.
say,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not gonna die from overworking
Yeah.
yourself, pretty much. And then they can approve these type of things for you. So
I see.
that's really cool. Depends on the studio, though, I guess. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
and
Of course. Of course.
how like
Yeah.
cool you are with some people, and
Yeah. I'm sure
but
that's a big thing to it as well.
yes, but yeah, I mean, it's basically after work you come home and you keep working and you try to get a gig where you can make them understand that you cannot work 8 hours, a day,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And does that like, how does that approval process work? You just gotta shoot an email over, say this is what's happening, and is it okay to do this? Or
Yes. I
simple as
mean,
that?
I mean, the few times I was approached, they were aware that I was working in a studio. I mean, people can see that are approaching you,
Sure. Sure.
and then it's basically like sometimes they would say, "Ah, sorry, we cannot do that,"
Yeah. Of
uh,
course. Of course.
because they would maybe expect you to take time off or something from
Yes.
work.
Yes. 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 Yes.
But other than that, it's basically just a matter of negotiating and saying, "Hey, I can make 3 hours after work, and
Right.
that makes that much hours per week.
And then
Maybe
yeah.
on a
Yeah.
like I the latest I did, I basically worked 8 hours on the weekends
Mm-hmm.
and after work 2 hours, which was
Right.
really
Right. Right.
really good. I mean, that was totally doable. And you do that for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's done, basically.
Nice. And do you find majority of clients that you've had that way are quite understanding about it and quite accommodating?
Yes, I mean,
Good to hear.
yeah, I was working for Nvidia recently.
Nice.
That was really really nice. The way they handled these type of things.
Brilliant.
And you also usually when they basically hire you as a freelancer, you also have like how to say, they're gonna pay you for a set amount of hours
Right.
that you're just gonna work off.
Yes.
And sometimes I mean, they get in what kind of situation you are, and if they can fit you in, they're gonna give you things that are not of high priority, I guess.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you can basically just work off your hours on the side, and they just give you feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that is done, you're basically fulfilled the contract, and everybody should be happy.
Yeah. And how do you balance? So you mentioned obviously one way you do it is by establishing how many hours per day the work will be done in, outside of your regular work. But personally, like, how do you tackle this? Do you plan the day, or do you just take each task as it comes along and just power through it and then go to sleep? What's your approach?
Yeah, so I mean, as I said, like the type of tasks the type of gigs I would take, I get to choose basically, and I would most likely, which I also did, like choose something where I feel like comfortable with,
Yes.
and that I can like do in that amount of time, where I have a good feeling, like, okay, I can do this fairly quick, and I feel comfortable with doing that. So, and then I basically can pretty much, like you said, like powering through it and just get it done. I guess with something that is like more elaborate and you have no experience with, I would be very hesitant in taking something like that if I'm not having more time on my hand, let's say,
Right.
because you don't want to mess with clients that way.
Of course, yes.
I think it's very important to have a very clear, open, and honest conversation beforehand regarding that. But other than that, like during work, I have my head at work, and while I'm basically leaving the office, I'm already thinking of what can I do with this type of project right now, So
that's good. So you basically focus on what the task at hand is. Like, for example, at work, it's only work, and then when you leave, that's when the other stuff kicks in, right?
Yes.
Brilliant.
I think that's actually like very doable. Like it may sound like
for sure.
It may sound like you need to do some crazy switching between modes, but it actually kind of works as soon as you just get started,
Precisely. I'm in a similar kind of situation. There's like, I think back in October, there's like 4 different things I was doing that need to be done in a short period of time. It just overlapped. But it was, I think, changing hats is the best metaphor for it. You just, once that's done, you switch to the next thing and then switch back or whatever else.
Yes.
Once you do it more often, it just becomes natural to do so.
Yeah. I mean, also like when you work in a company like DICE, for example, you get to do a lot of different things, and there are a lot of different projects. So it sometimes requires you to also, switch between total different tasks, like one is like, I don't know, World War II or something, and the other thing is suddenly Star Wars, and then but as soon as you start the task, you manage to get it done pretty much.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it works quite well, I think. Like,
awesome.
You wouldn't expect that, but
I guess on the outside of thinking, like, how do you manage all these things? But then you just explained that it can be done, and you live in proof of that as well.
Yes.
In terms of like a day to day, so obviously you worked in a few different studios now. As a concept artist, so I've asked a few people this question. What is a typical day like for yourself? I should mention that depending on the project, obviously the approach can be different because completely contrasting IPs, for example.
Yeah.
And I know some studios only particularly work on one huge IP at a time before they move on to the next one. Some have multiple things going on any given time. So to people that are trying to get in, their break in the studio, want to work in a studio, for example, what are they likely to expect working as a concept artist in studio, in a game studio in particular?
Yeah, I think like there's nothing to overcomplicate it really. It's basically like I can talk a bit about my time when I was working at Massive Entertainment on the Division 2. It was basically we have this game. You can pretty much run it in your editor and fly around in the map and see what's there.
Mm-hmm.
And you will get like tasks assigned to you, or a person approaches you directly and tells you what they need, and then you basically just try to help them. That's your job, like as a concept artist, is pretty much also to support other teams in getting an understanding of how they have to build things,
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if you look at this stuff right now, it's pretty much like, okay, we're working on this Pentagon map and we have a underground lab.
Yeah.
And we need this prop that's going to be extracted as a main objective.
Yeah.
And then you get like some like either they provide you with like a mood board, which they did in this case. Like, it was full of these chemical tanks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then basically just make something that is interesting, and you try to make it fit with whatever is needed and required for it. For example, this prop in the center, because it needed to be transported away by a helicopter, so that's also part of the brief. You need to take that into consideration, like where could ropes attach to it and things like that.
I see.
And at some point you also get to understand like technical limitations that certain games have, of course. Like, just as an example, if you were asked to build a character design or something, it's pretty much you cannot, for example, because you cannot have like clothes or something like a cape hanging over, because the players wear backpacks, and it will require having a guy creating a specific physics engine for that cloth to do like wobble around while you're walking or stuff like that. And you get to learn these type of things, and makes you basically become more and more efficient with your tasks.
Is there anything that you wish you would have learned or known beforehand, before you got to a game studio? Or are you pleased with the learning steps you took within the studios that got you to the level you're at now?
Good question. I think like every studio so far, I've been in 3. Obviously, they have been differently in the way that the tasks worked and how you get them.
Yeah.
But I think if you're just familiar with working with briefs, or even brief tasks to yourself, that's, I think, something where you will have a good starting point.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the beginning of working on the Division 2, I also basically just hit and miss. You just design something, and then they were gonna tell you, oh, wait, we cannot have this and we cannot have that, and this is not working. Because of that, you basically just fall into the cold water in the beginning. Work your way out of there again until you're done, and then you learn from that.
Of course, yeah. And what's the review process like? So obviously, you got the brief. Are you often reviewed like randomly? Is it hourly or daily? Or does it depend on each studio and each art director?
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that comes down to each position's attribute, the way it's handled in each studio. There are some art directors that are pretty much concept artists themselves, and there are others where they like act more as how to say, people that you will encounter in meetings, and then they will just, in a group of people sitting on the table, basically give around the word and have talk about your design.
Yes.
Or you even receive like through a messenger or something, the feedback, like, hey, can we change this and that, or something like that. But in terms of the division, because they really liked the work I was doing, you can also get into a position where people trust you more and more, and you become more or less like an expert of that field. Like I was really much responsible. I mean, I was responsible for all the skill items in the game, which are those, exactly like this drone, for example, all these deployable player related objects that you can use to your advantage. And feedback then becomes more something like, oh, we cannot do this because gameplay reasons. We, like, for example, with this drone, if you scroll down, there's like a GIF image of how it deploys, and that was basically my idea to like catapult it above the player, which I thought was really cool. But in the game that looks very different in the end, because what if there's like a ceiling above you, know?
Yes.
And then also they have things like, oh, we cannot have it too far from the player because the drone will lose the connection or whatever. There are so many reasons that you cannot expect, because every game has their own technology and tech involved, basically, and different animation systems and whatnot. So it's basically just a lot of conversations as well with other people. So if you're like somebody that is super quiet and afraid of speaking to others, I think that's not very good to have you in a position like maybe there are some people that would expect from a concept art role that you sit silently in a corner with your headset on and you can just make cool things. But if you want to be good at it, you need to get others, as many people as you can, involved into each design you're making. And you should also accept that not everything you're doing will be good, and sometimes even will be cut or changed so it doesn't look as good as you intended it to be. Like some of these designs, they look like they are because they basically had to look this way, and I mean, on this particular page you have here, there could be also reasons like suddenly, we need 3 more modifications, but we don't have, we only have a week or something. Let's assume that. And that also influences how good the design is. And you just need to accept that, okay, this is the best I could do. It's off now and you're on something new. So that's also part of the challenge. I've met some concept artists that basically work themselves into positions where they were given pretty much infinite time to what they were doing.
Wow.
So that's pretty insane. But I think it's very good, because there are some concept artists that basically become notorious for their level of quality, let's say.
Yes.
And then they will basically get these type of tasks that will require them to do exactly that.
Got it. That's some really good points. And it ties into the next question, which is people trying to get into a studio, what kind of qualities or behaviors they should have. You mentioned a few in terms of being able to work to a brief, being able to understand a brief. Another one you mentioned is about communication. So be able to take on board feedback, take on board what's been asked of you, talk strategy as well. Anything else that you believe or think from your perspective that would be just for people trying to get into or want to work in a studio?
Yeah, I think like the one thing, I mean, I never encountered anyone having that, but I can totally see it happening. And what I'm talking about is that since you have like you're entering a kind of competitive field when you're becoming a concept artist, not only competitive on the market but also competitive in the team in the studio itself. And that's in my experience has been always very healthy, with like people pushing each other. But I can totally see that some people might struggle with that because they think they're, I don't know, way better than others, or the other way around.
Yes,
even.
yes.
Or
Insecurities and ego, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or some people are even jealous if somebody gets a lot of praise for their work, and they basically get overlooked. And also what we were mentioning in the beginning, like I always was very fortunate, of course, to work on the cool stuff. And you cannot, but I also got some tasks that I'm not even showing in my portfolio.
Right.
That were not so cool. So there are also very boring tasks like creating, I don't know, signs for restaurants and stuff like that, for example. And you still should like treat these tasks as you should still give your very best. You know what I mean? Like, and not be like, what is this? I don't want to do this. Like I want to, also do like a cool robot or something. And I think you just need to be patient, but also, like really trying to always do your best in order to get to do cool stuff. Pretty much, I'd say.
Sweet. I think that's well put and well said. This is a personal one from me, and I think it'll benefit other people as well. Is I'm contemplating sometime this year. I'm redoing my portfolio once that's done. Approach some studios, and
that's awesome.
And a few are a bit of a ways away, so it means relocation. And
yes.
with a family, with a young family, that's something that I've put a lot of thought into, whether I want to do it or not. And there's a lot of factors to do that as well. Obviously, you've relocated a bunch of times. You just mentioned as well. How have you found relocating, and how did it work for you? What obstacles did you come across, and did like studios help out? Because I know some do relocation assistance. So if you'd like to talk a bit about that, that'd be super helpful, I think.
Yeah, so I have to say, like, the relocation here from DICE was the best I had so far. Like, I have to give them some props here. But I think in general, like, I was super lucky with my relocation at any point. Like, they will, of course, give you like a budget, like a realistic budget, in that will, and also with insurance and so on, so you can ship your goods, and they will of course make sure you got a place to stay. And like in all the cases so far, they are also very trying to consider what type of apartment you'd like to have. Like you can even like you can like demand a lot there, basically. But I heard some horror stories as well. Like there can also sometimes things can also go wrong, which the company has basically no power over, right? Because you can end up like in an apartment that is, I don't know, with mold or something, and you cannot really live in it. And usually the studios are supportive with that type of stuff. Of course, they will try to get you a new place and so on. But then, of course, they are also tied, to like how fast can they find you something? In the worst case, you have to live in a hotel or something. But yeah, you usually always get a place. Like the studios are building all a routine nowadays because there's a lot of turnover all the time. So some studios even have their own rows of apartments. Which belongs to them, and you can basically rent one of these so-called company apartments.
Sure.
That depends on the studio. Some of them may come with like, I don't know, things like, yeah, you can live in the company apartment, but we would like you to move out after a given time, because they want to basically, whenever there's a new person coming in, they want them to be free and not having people occupy them forever, pretty much. But or I heard from a person that moved from the US to Europe and needed a container for all his stuff. And some people then may expect they can, because it creates a lot of costs. And it can in worst case, if you're like, I don't know, move with your entire house and family, go over the budget. And then then some people expect, oh, but I can deduct it from tax, but then it's suddenly not working, and that can cause some frustration. There are some stories for sure where some things didn't go flawless. In my case, it has been always good. Like if you have family and kids, might be the same. I don't know. Might be more tricky. Depends. Really, I don't know.
No, that's sweet. And any tips you'd have, like generally just any listeners or anything, any tips you'd have, so if you are relocating, what are like maybe the top 3 or top few things that you'd recommend people to like keep an eye on or definitely pay more attention to if they are relocating?
Yeah, I mean, if you're relocating, you always have to keep in mind that you are doing a big investment, right? Like in terms of you're gonna, live in a completely new place. You pretty much will know nobody, right? Except your colleagues at work. And you should like really weigh out if this is like what you want, of course. But also you should, do proper research on the place you're going to live in, because, you want to make sure that because I came from Frankfurt, and which is like a super modern city. And I moved to a very modern city. So I kind of knew what I can expect, but it can sometimes be worth, like considering, are there any districts I don't want to live in, because I wouldn't feel comfortable, or that I don't know, I want to live in an apartment with these type of standards. And so I think it's just important to like really do a lot of research also about currency and how expensive it is to go out for lunch and these type of things. How much is that place they're offering you even worth it, and are there maybe cheaper options and so on. I think it's also good sometimes if you move to a new country, especially if you have one guy or something in your friend list that already works at that place, and just ask questions, because very often you also get a very wrong impression of something, or
Sweet.
I think that those are some tips I can give.
I think they're solid. A lot of it's common sense as well, but I think sometimes we quickly jump into things and then we think, shit, why didn't I do that first? So there's a few things that you can get away with, but I think moving, especially to another country, let alone to another city in the same country, for example, as you know, is a big step. So definitely take the appropriate steps, research and whatnot, and ask those questions. I guess the final question before we wrap it up, what does the future hold for you, either in terms of your career progression? Where do you see yourself heading towards? Is it, like further on, is it to remain as a concept artist, maybe change to another role, work on IPs, break into freelance? What does the future hold for you?
So since I just recently started here at DICE, I'm not going to leave here anytime soon because I really like it.
Yes, good.
But I'm going to the IFCC Croatia this year in May. I'll basically try to become a better person. Try to become a better artist, obviously. And so far, I have to say everything happened kind of organically. So I'm
cool.
It went pretty well for me so far. So I think if I'm just not overthinking, if I'm not overthinking things and just always try my best, I think I will probably end up somewhere where I can be happy. I don't have any particular goals, to be honest.
Sweet. Like that's beautiful, man. I think we mentioned about there about things happening organically. That's like a personal thing. I prefer things to do as well, and it's just if it happens, it happens, and you just adapt to it, as opposed to big, sharp, rapid changes. But other people obviously respond to that better than the organic side.
Yes.
No, that's awesome.
I think like also if you're just trying to do everything as good as you can, the opportunities will kind of seek you. You know what I mean? And they will just and you will basically just go from one door to the other and just go through, basically, or not. I mean,
brilliant. Thank you very much, Lars. It's been a great chat. Sorry to take your time on a Saturday, but I think this has been great.
It was super awesome.
I know you've
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Awesome, man. For your space break, I believe you've done a tutorial for that. Is that correct?
I did a tutorial for the Space Sniper. I released that recently.
Okay. Where did you release it on? Just let the people.
It's on Gumroad. It's on the ArtStation store, and I also have it on QBrush.
Got it. So if
you can compare prices there.
Okay, cool.
They are differently because
you got them all here, haven't you? All the links. So.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
A big thank you to Lars for being my guest. I look forward to speaking to him again in the future. Till next time.